All right, this is gonna get you in trouble a little bit, but Korean or Chinese food? All right, Bach or Schoenberg? Welcome to another episode of the Whole Note Podcast. My name is Shinyoung Kim, and today we will be joined by composer Sami Seif. Sami is an internationally recognized composer, having worked closely with individual members of the Cleveland Orchestra, various renowned small ensembles, and orchestras such as the Kalamazoo Symphony Orchestra. We sat down as Sami shared with us his work as a composer, the many things that inspire his work as a DMA student at the City University of New York, or more commonly known as CUNY, and much more. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode and would like insight into the lives of other renowned artists, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. We hope you enjoy. Thanks. Hey, Sami, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, you have the distinction of being the first composer on the podcast. So I'm really grateful to have you here and to talk to you about your work.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thanks for making the trip out here to New Jersey.
Oh, it was easy.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you about your work as a composer, but before we do, I kind of want to talk to you and talk with you about the prelude of it all and how it all started. So can you share with us a little bit about your musical background and what it is that led you down the road of composition?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm someone who entered music in order to compose, not someone who entered music and then started composing. It was kind of the other way around.
Sure.
I had always liked music, and one day I just asked my parents, hey, could I get a keyboard? And so we did. We got a keyboard, and this was in Abu Dhabi, by the way. And the keyboards there are often designed to play Arabic music as well as Western music. And so they're microtonal keyboards. They're very much adjustable. So that was actually my first instrument, which is a bit unusual in our field to have that as a first instrument.
Right.
But that's how I got started.
Okay.
Also, my parents kind of thought I would give music up quite soon. So they didn't hire a teacher. So I had to teach myself for a while.
Yeah.
And I did it. I was like, well, can I just have some textbooks or something?
Yeah.
So they bought me some textbooks, and that's how I learned to read and write music, by reading these textbooks.
Okay. So you didn't start out with formal training necessarily. When did that start to take shape in terms of you went from the textbooks to going to a teacher? About what age did that happen?
Yeah, so I started at the age of 12. That's when I started my self-guided studies into music.
Mm-hmm.
And I was obsessed very early on. I really got into this very intensively from the start.
Sure.
So I guess you could say that I kind of progressed faster than a lot of people who only practice a couple of hours a week, because I was doing at least a couple hours a day.
Yeah.
Especially because I started music right before the summer break. So
yeah.
You can guess that my entire summer break was taken up really pretty much with only one thing.
Right. Okay.
So about a year later is when I got my first teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And even that wasn't as straightforward as it sounds like, because it was kind of hard in my area at the time to find a teacher, and there was a lot of complexities to it. And then as soon as I found my teacher, she had to move away soon after.
Mm-hmm.
And this had happened to me a couple of times.
Sure.
So it really took a while before any formal training was actually able to kick in for any long period of time.
Well, I want to go back to the idea that you went into music for composition. Like, do you remember a specific moment in your life that really led you down in that path? Was there a specific performance you watched, or?
I don't think so, not as far as I can recall. It was really just, I always knew I wanted to do something more creative. Sure. I knew I wasn't getting a regular office job. At least that's what I thought at the time.
Yeah. Still is, right?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah, so that was it. I always knew I wanted to write music, but I just kept putting it off. I was a procrastinator, I guess.
Yeah.
Until I wasn't.
Yeah. Well, and Yeah, that's really fascinating. I've almost never heard of someone that from the beginning went into music to study composition, because obviously you see musicians that start with an instrument mostly, or maybe they're a conductor and then they slowly, dabble with composition. But for you, it seemed like just right away, just full-fledged composition, huh?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's still reflected in my practice today because I don't even play an instrument anymore too much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I did get some piano training. I
Sure.
did get a bit of. There's one can find if they work very hard a video of me playing percussion online, and probably videos of me singing as well.
Mm.
But I don't really play an instrument anymore. I kind of write at a writing desk.
Yeah.
I'll reference an instrument once in a while, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Your instrument is just staff paper, right? Basically.
I guess.
Or your brain. I don't know. Your thoughts.
I guess. I mean, I guess so.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own procedure to this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now I want to talk a little bit more in depth about your work as a composer. So you've had the opportunity and the pleasure of working with various distinguished musicians, chamber ensembles, and even orchestras. Can you talk about just the differences and like how each is unique from the other, in terms of just the different musicians or groups, I guess? And can you share with us the challenges of each, maybe too?
Sure. Yeah. I find all of them very exciting in their own way, and they're of different medium, uh, in so many ways. Probably too many to that I can think of right now. Uh, I heard, for example, that like harmonic rhythms tend to be slower in orchestra pieces than in solo and chamber pieces, which kind of makes sense
Mm-hmm.
now that we, not to get too technical. Sorry, sorry. But to me, uh, there's a lot of fun in working with individuals, like solo part and chamber stuff. Like
Yeah.
especially because a lot of my pieces are informed by the players that play them. I
Mm.
take ideas from them, and especially as I'm writing, I bounce off ideas with them.
Yeah.
So they definitely do leave their mark on it,
Yeah.
which tends to be a little bit less of a case with orchestra.
Right.
Yeah, it tends to be a little less one-on-one with an orchestra, unless it's just a lot harder to get a single interaction with every individual in an orchestra. But it still does happen, actually, I'm glad to say. Like
Sure.
backstage, sometimes people are really nice and they introduce themselves and
Mm-hmm.
we'll talk a little bit. So that's also fun
Mm-hmm.
in its own right. And audiences tend to be so much bigger in orchestra concerts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So would you say that when you work, or if you're composing a solo piece or maybe even like a smaller ensemble piece, do you feel that you just have more time for like the intimate discussions that can lead to growth towards that particular work, or?
Usually, yes, there's more time, and it's not just that. It's also when you're focusing all your attention on a solo line for a solo piece, it's just a different thing than when you have an orchestra
Right.
and you have to think about the coordination of it.
Mm-hmm.
But even that also comes into play with on chamber pieces,
Yeah.
but to a lesser extent.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and there's also the fact that the orchestras are used to playing a certain way. They're used to playing with each other.
Sure.
There's a whole set of baggage that comes with an orchestra being that structure.
Right. Right. Yeah. And what about specifically with orchestra? Like when you're composing a piece for an orchestra, I mean, of course, we have a lot of software today that kind of help with this, but like, do you try to just in your head create the sounds that you're trying to come up with, and just how does that all come together?
Yeah, you have to use your creativity and your experience.
Mm-hmm.
And to some extent, there's nothing that can substitute just the experience of sharpening your ear, developing your ear,
Right.
writing something, hearing it,
Yeah.
and then that back and forth does help to correlate what you hear with what you write.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
that's definitely, that reminds me of a story actually.
Mm-hmm.
If I can deviate a little bit, I remember
Please.
when I was writing my viola concerto, I brought it into my teacher once, and he looked at it and said, "I have no idea what this is gonna sound like." So that was a fun memory for me.
Yeah. Was this in Cleveland? Or?
I was in Cleveland.
Yeah, so I want to continue talking about your work and your focus these days.
Sure.
I know that your attention has shifted a little bit to centering around the phenomenology of time. What is that? What does that look like? And how did you come to make this your focus?
First, thank you for visiting my website. First and foremost.
Yeah.
Please, guys, visit my website. It's really nice. Okay, maybe not, but it's a website.
You have some really beautiful pictures.
Thank you. So the thing about the focus on phenomenology of time, it's not really a prescription on how to do things. It's more of an approach and a way of thinking about things. For me, that tends to be centered around how I try to write my material and keep in mind how human attention works, trying to understand both through science and experience and how one's attention evolves throughout a piece of music and how I can play with that as a composer.
Sure.
And attention and time is inevitably linked to one's attention and one's memory. So these three things really go together. Let me give you, like, if I could, a little anecdote. I heard that someone asked Ravel once, what is good form? And he said, good form is when the listener never gets bored. And I really love that answer for so many reasons, besides the fact that, I mean, if you say this to someone who doesn't work in music, they might say, oh, isn't that obvious? Yeah. But I feel like a lot of musicians can lose sight of that. Yeah. A lot of composers might lose sight of that. The other thing I love about that answer is that it's not a technique-oriented answer. He doesn't say, like, oh, good form is when everything relates to the motif. Because, you know, that can sometimes lead to very, to me, uninspiring pieces just because they've dogmatically centered around following the motif to its logical conclusion. Yeah. Or maybe to its logical destruction or whatever. I mean, sometimes,
Right.
So that's what that means to me, the focus on phenomenology of time. Or that's how it leads me to think about that as I'm composing.
Yeah. Well, and where's the genesis of this? Like, what led you down this path?
Oh, right. I think it was, I started listening to the Stockhausen lectures because he talks a lot about time. Yeah. And he has a really awesome article called How Time Passes By. Yeah. Which I believe was originally written in German and then translated to English. Sure. And then from there, I started reading some stuff by one of his students, Jonathan Kramer, who wrote a book on time, on time and music. And that led me down this rabbit hole that I'm still in.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think your pursuit of this is fascinating in a time where I think we could both agree that, you know, our attention span as a society is probably at an all-time low and for many of us. And so the idea of keeping the listener listening, basically, or, you know, keeping their attention, that's really fascinating. So are there harmonies that you experiment with, or different rhythms? Like, what are the things that you are working with?
Yeah, see, now it's examples tend to be very complicated because any musical example is gonna have a network of things that are interrelated. For example, you ask, is there a certain harmony? Well, if a harmony stands out somewhere, it depends on the context, right? Yeah. If I give you something relatively very dissonant, it's going to stand out. But perhaps if I give you a lot of other dissonant stuff next to it, it's just going to sound like another one of those harmonies.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to say I don't have a direct answer to that.
Sure. No, I'm just trying to poke your brain into this because I think it's such a unique topic. And yeah, I mean, so would you say that a lot of your works now are fueled by this focus primarily?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is central to my approach.
Yeah.
This just orientation towards things.
Yeah. That's interesting. Moving forward a little bit, I know, or I would presume as a composer, it is imperative that you are constantly finding different modes of inspiration um, in order to sustain your work.
Right.
Can you share with us a little bit about where you draw your inspiration from and how it affects your different works of composition?
Sure, yeah. I draw a lot of my inspiration from the things I read.
Mm-hmm.
I also, again, I can't overstate the importance of the individuals I'm working with at any given time, like the people I'm writing a piece for, and their insight and feedback as well.
Yeah.
Because I also draw a lot of inspiration from individual players, like writing a piece for someone or for an ensemble. That's a big inspiration for me.
Yeah.
As well as forced deadlines.
Yeah.
All of these things are good. Also, I like to travel, and I like to also change up my environment. So sometimes I'll work in my apartment for a couple of weeks, and then once I feel like it's gotten too comfortable, I'll like go to a coffee shop or something. And I like to always change things up a little bit. Yeah. So literature, as I mentioned, and travel, and the people I'm working with.
Yeah. Okay. Would you say that the people you're working with, is it just the life experiences that you have with them that you think you gain from that, or what specifically?
Yeah, there's that. There's also just like hearing them play.
Yeah.
Like if I go to their concerts, if
Right.
I have a chance to go to their concerts or watch their performances,
Right.
or just as I say, my interactions with them and their feedback and what they bring to the table,
Right.
in terms of their experience and their personhood.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, because I think regardless of whether you're a composer or even an instrumentalist, I think the field of music can be a lonely road to go down, right? Because for a lot of us, we're kind of forced to isolate ourselves, whether it be in a practice room or for you in your apartment or a coffee shop, wherever it may be. And so it forces us to be alone and, kind of hash out our craft a little bit. But I think there is something very essential about the interpersonal connections that we can have and what we can gain from that, right? And yeah, I mean, I think even for me as a cellist, like some of my most integral moments of growth came just, working with someone or rehearsing or, lessons, obviously, just all of that. And I'm sure that rings true for you as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a part of it. As you say, there's always the tension between working as an individual and working with others.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in a perfect world, they complement each other.
Right. Right. So how would you say you balance that?
I don't. At any given time, I'm not balancing either.
Yeah.
I tend to be intensively in one or the other.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so, I mean, would you say, like, do you like to go to, art museums, see paintings? Like, is that also something that you find inspiration from?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only just that, but besides the fact that I love going to museums, I also love walking. And that can be very inspiring.
Yeah.
Or I also like trying new experiences, even if that doesn't end up being directly inspiring. Like, even if I don't write a new piece about, I don't know, scuba diving or something, I still find that the experience of it is just taking a break like that from my usual setup
Right.
is refreshing in its own way,
Right.
and that can certainly be beneficial
Yeah.
in ways that might not be easy to explain.
No, and I think that makes sense. And I mean, you live in New York, so you have plenty of opportunities to walk almost anywhere and everywhere, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, and any given walk can be its own journey and experience. So,
Right.
yeah.
And one of the things I actually love to do is just to like walk like east to west throughout all of Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
like see either side
Yeah.
within one walk.
Okay.
That's a pretty fun thing.
How long does that usually take you?
If I want to go all the way east, I think it usually takes me about half an hour ish, and then if I would go all the way west, it'll, I think, add to that maybe 40 minutes ish.
Okay.
I tend to walk pretty quickly. I will also say that.
That's fair. That's fair.
It doesn't take as much time as one might think.
Yeah. No, I know I mean, not east to west, but I've done like a walk from like, around 30th Street to like Lincoln Center. And I mean, that's not as far, obviously, but it goes quicker than you think, obviously.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, staying on this topic of inspiration, who are some of the composers that, whether it be modern or, people that have passed, obviously, that have inspired you in your work?
Oh yeah, there's a long list of people, but I really love George Crumb. Really love Joseph Schwantner also. I also love Donald Erb.
Okay. Yeah.
Those are some of the people Stockhausen too. I know not everyone, people have mixed feelings about him, about his music. But yeah, I guess those are some.
Okay. What are the qualities that you just find fascinating with those composers?
Actually, a lot of it is their experience of time and their approach to time, and their rhythmic vocabulary too.
Yeah.
One of the things I think that draws them all together is they tend to have a very big duration variance. What I mean by that is like you have a lot of passages in their music that is just so slow that you lose count of things.
Yeah.
But also sections that are so fast that once again you can't count because of how fast the notes are.
Yeah.
And of course some stuff in the middle.
Yeah.
So I like it adds a lot of depth to a piece, I think.
Right.
It's something I tend to do in a lot of my pieces and something I tend to enjoy in a lot of pieces.
Yeah.
Especially I feel like I feel like in New York a lot of composers don't write very long notes. Or if they do, they tend to only write very long notes. I think something about living in New York and hearing all the movement makes people want to write very fast type music.
Yeah.
Or only very slow music. But I think having both in one piece is very exciting.
Right. And I was thinking about this as I was preparing for this podcast, because I think as composers, you guys have the most difficult job out of all musicians. Because as an instrumentalist or just as a performer, you're mostly playing music that's already been performed hundreds, thousands, millions of times, right? And so, yes, of course, you can have your own interpretation, and it can be kind of a blank slate for you to interpret something in a unique way, but at the end of the day you're playing notes that have already been played. But for you as a composer, you have the ultimate blank canvas where you're creating something out of, for a lack of a better word, nothing, and you're putting into paper the thoughts that you have in your mind. And that's just I've always found that so fascinating. And so just the idea that you still draw inspiration from composers that you take with you, I think it makes it a little bit easier to digest what you do, because it for me it just seems like such a daunting task to compose. So.
Oh, it's a daunting task for me too. It's
yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your day-to-day, like what So if you have like, let's say, a piece that you have a deadline in 2 months where it needs to be fully written by then, like, what does a typical day to day look like? Do you try to tell yourself, all right, like I'm gonna try to get at least this amount of the work done? Like, how does that process work out for you?
Yeah. Let me, I guess, start by saying two things.
Hmm.
Number one, if you give me 10 years to work on something, I'll work on it for 10 years.
That's fair.
But also, I will pull an all-nighter at least one night before. Just to make sure it's all good, you
That's
know?
fair.
The other thing is, oh, and if it's an orchestra piece, I'm going to have to pull at least two all-nighters.
Oh wow.
One to finish the piece and one to finish the parts. So it's just how it is.
That's fair. That's fair.
Until AI starts making parts for us.
Yeah, that's coming soon, I'm sure. So.
Hey, I'm praying for it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't really have a day-to-day because there's just always so much to do that the life no day can be like any other day. Between right now doing my coursework, I'm also teaching, and between these two things and having to compose and even composing, being a composer, a lot of people might not be aware of this, but you can't spend all your time as a composer only composing, because a lot of composing also has to be things like going to rehearsal, making parts, cleaning up your scores, writing performance notes, trying to apply to grants and competitions and stuff like that.
Right.
So really, to be honest, only about half my time composing at best only about half my time as a composer is going to be actually writing down notes. The rest of the time has to, if not more than half, has to be taken up by other things. So no, I don't really have a schedule for, and it's not just that. The other thing is, as I'm writing a piece, to me, writing a piece is kind of like discovering a person.
Yeah.
And the deeper you go, the more connections start to happen, and the stronger the profile of the piece becomes for me.
Yeah.
So it's really not a linear process.
Right.
So the number of decisions I make towards the end of a piece is much greater than at the beginning.
Interesting.
The number of setting something in stone is going to be way more at the very end. And I also often tend to, as I say, in that all-nighter I pull right before a piece is handed in, I also tend to do a final rewriting of the piece that very night, just because I know now so much more about the piece than I did at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so there's an opportunity to get more things right this time.
Yeah.
Because I tend to rewrite my pieces many times before they actually go to the player.
Right.
And I remember a specific instance in which I rewrote a piece like, I don't know, 1 or 2 weeks before it was due, started fully from scratch.
Yeah.
And, just worked frantically with my hair on fire trying to get it done.
Yeah.
But it turned out well.
Yeah.
And I think that was better than, continuing with a piece that I thought was not as good as I could have made at the time.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of, staying on the topic of revising, I'm sure there are pieces that you wrote years ago that, are out there for people to enjoy, but you still maybe have thoughts of like revising, maybe, or like, do you go back and do that with any of your works, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, if I have an opportunity to get a piece reperformed, and I have a strong feeling about how to, for lack of a better term, fix it, I will definitely take that opportunity.
Sure.
If the time is, if it's possible.
Yeah.
But I also tend to do a lot of revising as I'm writing. That is to say, like, after I give a piece to a player, I'll often try to get it to them even before it's done, so that I can get some feedback.
Right.
After it's played once, I'll also often revise that for a second performance. So that's when most of the revisions tend to happen.
Okay. Cool. Well, and you kind of harped on this earlier, but what are some of like the most intense deadlines that you've met? Whereas like you have like less than 2 weeks or something to write. So has that happened much or?
Um, let me. I don't often get. Actually, yes. Wait, I remember once. There was a thing at the Bowdoin Festival they did where they made you write a piece in 2 days. But honestly, that was fun because I entered it feeling inspired. I felt like I knew what I was gonna do, and then I was just waiting for them to give me the instrumentation. Well, it's not like anything would have worked with any instrumentation, but
Sure.
yeah.
Was this like a competition for the composition students there, or?
No, it was just like a fun thing they do where they pair composers and players.
Oh, okay.
It's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found it fun. I of course did my all-nighters, but it was still fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So you alluded to the fact that you're in the midst of coursework. So you're currently a DMA student at CUNY, or City University of New York, for those that may not be aware. So what does your work as a doctoral student in composition look like? And what do you believe you've gained thus far in this program?
Oh, I've gained so much. Besides the fact that the teachers are awesome, and it's not like there's only one awesome teacher, there's a lot of awesome teachers.
Yeah.
So besides that, there's also the fact that we have a lot of great players there at the Graduate Center at CUNY where I study, and a lot of great teachers. Besides the composition teachers, a lot of awesome theory teachers, musicology teachers. So that I found very inspiring and exciting, and I always learn so much from them too.
Sure.
So, and the opportunities they give us also to work with the ensembles they bring in and the players they bring in. So there's a lot of benefits from there.
Sure.
What it looks like on my end, besides lessons, is there's also the coursework and the research that I'm doing, stuff about, as you can guess, music and time. So hopefully that's what my dissertation will be.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and so, like, in terms of, I know every school is a little different. Like, do you present recitals of your works?
Yes, we have several recitals a year.
Okay. So, or like, are there requirements of, like, you need to compose like a chamber ensemble piece, you have to compose a solo piece? Like, how does that all play out?
Yeah, it tends to be, it's a doctoral program, and so the requirements are a little bit looser. In undergrad, it definitely was a little more guided than that. It depends. Every year they bring in certain ensembles and certain players, and based on that, the opportunities are distributed that way.
Okay. So have you had a chance to work closely with instrumental teachers there as well?
A little bit, actually. Yeah.
And so when you work with them, I'm guessing you're also working with their student, usually.
Sometimes yes, but not necessarily. Sometimes it was just specific to just trying to get feedback about that specific instrument.
Right. And then as part of what I assume is your assistantship, do you teach certain classes or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do teach. I teach at Brooklyn College.
Okay. So what classes do you teach?
I just teach fundamentals of music theory.
Okay.
So music theory 101 for non-majors.
The 1451, right? Of life.
I do teach them that.
Yeah.
But it's exciting to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. To see them learn that and to see them.
Or is it music majors, or is it just kind of for any of these classes?
Yeah, it tends to be non-music majors, but sometimes I might have like a music technology major or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Now to kind of diverge away from your work as a composer, we introduced this segment last episode, but I want to do, I want to ask you questions, and it's called quarter note questions.
Okay, got it.
So kind of like rapid fire, but not super fast. So We'll take it at like a moderato tempo.
Okay. Because I was getting ready to like presto this.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I got answers.
Bam, bam,
Yeah,
bam,
yeah.
right? Exactly. Yeah. No.
Like 17 times 42.
Yeah. Yo, it's not that kind of time. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So you talked about, your love for traveling. One country you would like to visit.
Oh, can I name two?
Sure.
Oh, I was like, no, you can't just
Well, I did say one, but I mean, you can break the rule. It's fine.
Japan / Italy.
Okay. Just because?
Part of it is the food.
Okay. They do have good food.
Honestly, that's most of it. Yeah, I know the food and the things I've read about these countries and just the curiosity of these things.
Yeah.
Hearing about them in the news.
Yeah. Well, and I want to visit. Well, I've had layovers in Japan, but I want to actually see the country. So I'm with you on that.
Mm.
I think I know the answer to this next one, but life of the party or staying in on a Friday night.
I feel like I could do both, depending on the Friday night.
That's fair.
So, I'm gonna not answer this one.
Okay, what's your MBTI?
Huh?
This isn't one of the questions, but what's your MBTI?
Oh shoot! Oh, I did that a long time ago. I don't remember.
Yeah, same. It's okay. I was just curious.
Oh, I took one of those online tests,
Yeah.
and I remember my cousin who was super into that looked at this and said, "Sammy, this is not you're a robot." Like, what do you mean? Like, I've never seen someone so evenly matched between being intuitive and reflective. What is it? What's the other one?
I forgot, honestly. I'm not super into it myself. I was just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been so long.
Yeah. All right, this is gonna get you in trouble a little bit, but Korean or Chinese food?
I'm so sorry for my Chinese food enthusiast, but Korean food.
Yeah.
I also love Chinese food.
Yeah.
But if I have to pick between the two,
well, it helps that you live in K-Town, right? So
I do live in K-Town.
So you have to be a little biased. I understand. I agree with you. So.
That wasn't part of the consideration, but I'm so glad it worked out that way. Actually, this is
just a happy coincidence.
It's a gorgeous coincidence.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so glad about this.
Exactly. Soup or salad?
It depends on the soup or the salad, but generally salad.
Favorite type of salad? Do you have a
favorite type of salad? I like tabbouleh, like
okay.
common Lebanese salad with
Very
parsley.
exotic.
Yeah.
All right. Sunny or rainy day?
Oh, sunny.
Okay.
Who would pick rain?
I don't know. Some people really crave that sometimes.
Some opinions are just wrong.
Opinions are like noses. Everyone has them.
Fair enough.
Subway or bus?
Subway or bus?
Depends on the day.
If it's not New York City, probably Subway.
Oh yeah, that's fair. Best time to compose?
Best time to go. Oh, 3 a.m.
3 a.m.
3 a.m. 4 a.m. Yeah.
Dude, I think a lot of musicians are just night owls by nature.
Yeah, it's just so much more peaceful at night. So much more quiet.
Yeah.
And what's nice about 3 a.m. is that I don't feel like I need to be anywhere in 3 hours usually. So that's a nice thing.
Yeah.
Like if I knew at 10 a.m. and I have to be, I don't know, who cares, at the bank or whatever, an hour later, it just ruins it, I like to have long stretches if I can.
Yeah. Well, and, I think our work as musicians kind of force us to be night people based, with concerts and a lot of that happening at night. So we're almost like indirectly conditioned to be night people, night owls in many ways.
Well, let me say this other thing. It's also like, I remember my undergrad days and I felt super busy, and I guess I was. But now that I look back on them, I'm like, that was the only time in my life in which I was almost expected to do nothing else but practice. And there was very few expectations on me besides that.
Yeah.
And that's a time it's very hard to get that as an adult, I feel like.
Yeah.
Once you enter the real world and
exactly.
your parents aren't subsidizing you practicing for 20 hours a day.
Yeah. Getting paid to practice, right?
Yeah, it's just... Yeah, those were some good days in that way.
Yeah. All right. Bach or Schoenberg?
Oh, Bach. Yeah,
Okay. Classical or romantic period?
romantic for me.
Really? Favorite composer from that?
I don't know, I love Beethoven.
Beethoven.
Yeah, Beethoven for sure is up there.
All right. So late Beethoven.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but even early Beethoven, I find so incredible. All the Beethovens are amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to argue with you on that one.
All the eras. Yeah.
Beethoven, yeah. I'm personally biased towards his middle period. I think that's when he really started to discover things that he obviously eventually added to his later works. But for me as a cellist, I also love Beethoven's middle period because that's when he started, experimenting more with the instrument. I would say, with the Eroica Symphony, giving us the melody at the beginning, but also his A major sonata. I feel like there's just so much where he really invested in us. So yeah, I love Beethoven for that.
Are you surprised that I didn't say Schoenberg? But for
No,
Bach,
I don't know, because I feel like it would almost be sacrilegious as a composer not to say Bach, because Bach is like he is like the godfather of classical music. So
we kind of think of him as like the fair enough. He's highly esteemed in Western culture.
yeah, sure, the patriarch, let's say, of Western classical music.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Okay.
If anything, Schoenberg is sometimes viewed as the guy who destroyed Western music.
Or rebuilt it, I guess.
Rebuilt it,
Yeah.
depending on how you want to view it.
Yeah.
But Schoenberg also wrote beautiful romantic music as well.
Mm.
Like
He did.
Girl Leader, oh my God, that's just incredible.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. So I guess this kind of ties into what we were just talking about: 20th century or Baroque music.
I feel like most of the Baroque stuff that survived, there was quality control, but 20th century less so.
Yeah.
Sorry to say that.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to say Baroque, but a lot of the 20th century stuff is also incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your favorite composers you mentioned, they were predominantly all 20th century. So.
That is true. Yeah.
Favorite non-classical music genre to listen to?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I do listen to a range of non-classical music, besides like various genres in Arabic music.
Yeah.
Also, I do like American pop. And
Okay. Taylor Swift?
No, not that.
Okay.
Or also, I like metal genres too.
Okay. Are you a big jazz person?
You know what? Occasionally.
Yeah.
Not too much.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Quartet or symphony to compose? Quartet.
Well, I've already written a string quartet, and I haven't written yet a symphony. So, right now I'm leaning towards symphony.
Okay. Well, we'll be looking forward to your first symphony then.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully, yeah.
One piece of music you can't live without.
One piece of music I can't live without. Schwantner's Sparrows.
So that's like your desert island piece right there.
Right now, that's putting me on the spot. That's what I'm inclined to say. Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. One composer you can't live without.
One composer I can't live without. This is tough. I might. Well, now I can't not answer Schwantner because now I've like been pigeonholed now. So I guess Schwantner.
Okay. New York or Cleveland?
Everything was cheaper in Cleveland. Let me just say that. Yeah. Everything was more affordable in Cleveland.
Yeah. Especially today.
Today or any day.
Yeah. Dude, I will never forget my love for chopsticks in Cleveland. Because I think you and we went a couple of times, but dude, like $7 for like a full-on meal. You can't beat that.
Yeah. And people in Cleveland are like, oh, now it's $8. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
if you eat something in New York for $8,
Right.
you're gonna be in the hospital the next
Exactly.
day. Yeah.
Well, and then also like coffee house. And, I mean, it wasn't.
Oh.
Yeah. It was all.
I have written so much music inside Coffee
Yeah.
House.
Yeah. Shout out
They
to
should
Coffee House.
they should be my sponsor. Hopefully, that would be nice.
Yeah. Netflix or Hulu?
Oh, I don't watch any of these.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
jeez. Why do you have to be so like? Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm a nerd.
Oh, I respect that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bow tie or skinny tie?
Probably skinny tie.
Yeah.
I guess I've worn skinny ties way more than bow ties.
Yeah. So like, are you pretty? When you have like a big premiere coming up, are you like planning out in advance what you're gonna wear for that, or?
Or
are you too busy to worry about the other stuff, the more important matters?
I try to make sure my suit doesn't need to be dry cleaned at any time, or if I do it in advance.
Yeah.
If I do wear a suit.
Yeah.
But honestly, most of my fashion choices are just wearing whatever doesn't need to be ironed or washed.
Well, yeah. Example A over here.
Exhibit A. I put on another shirt. I'm like, oh, this needs to be ironed.
Yeah.
But Shin Young is waiting for me. And I'm already late.
I'm always willing to wait for you, Sammy, so it's not a big deal. Well, Sammy, this has been really fun, and I feel like I've gained a lot just, talking to you and talking to you about your work. Before we go, can you share with us and the audience any imparting words of wisdom, especially to the younger ones that may be listening that are currently trying to cultivate their own passion for music?
The best advice is don't listen to anyone. No, I'm kidding. It's hard to give advice that's unguided if I don't know a specific person. I feel like all I can say, I guess, is to try to do this in a way where you enjoy it as much as possible, and with the people that you would enjoy it with as much as possible. That's just, I think that might be the only thing I could say. That's what I've gained the most fulfillment of. Really just enjoying the process of composing and having it come together and doing it with the people that I find most inspiring.
Yeah. It's all about the interpersonal connections, so.
That's a big part of this,
Yeah.
right? Even if you write your own name on the piece, sometimes there's a lot of other people that played a big role in it.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Well, Sammy, thanks for making the trip out here, and thanks for your time and your wisdom, and we look forward to hopefully listening and hearing more of your new works to come. So
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for hosting me.
yeah. Till next time.
Till next time.
Yeah.